Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Hi.
Hello.
Dear classmates and teacher, today we are going to talk about the interaction hypothesis by Michael Lang.
Michael Holland was born in 1945. He's an American linguist and he's also professor of SLA at University of Maryland. He's the author of over 100 journal articles and book chapters. In 2009, he was awarded a doctorate honoris causa by Stockholm University for his contributions to the field of SLA. Many of his research interests are epistemological issues and theory change in SLA, age differences, maturational constraints, and sensitive periods. Another one is SLA processes, for example, stabilization, fossilization in interlanguage development. And another one is task-based language teaching, and between others because there are many. Moreover, he has been credited on many occasions for introducing the interaction hypothesis, a theory of second language acquisition which places importance on face-to-face interaction. So, what is the theory about? The interaction hypothesis is a theory of second language acquisition which states that the development of language proficiency is promoted by face-to-face interaction and communication. The interaction hypothesis is a simplified description of SLA, which tries to explain the influence of interaction in the language learning process. In fact, the interaction hypothesis sits in line with a social interactionist approach, which emphasizes the influence of environment within which a learner is engaged. Before we move forward to the explanation, let's take a look to the four main constructs that this hypothesis comprises. Input refers to any of the linguistic forms received by the learner. Output refers to the linguistic form produced by the learner. Interaction, defined as a function that input and output fulfill. Feedback. Two kinds of feedback can be identified within the context of the hypothesis. Explicit feedback, such as, but not limited to, corrections or metalinguistical explanations. And implicit feedback also, including negotiation strategies such as clarification requests or comprehension checks. And now, my classmate Luciano is going to dive deeper into this theory.
Thank you, Kathy. All right, so the interaction hypothesis is basically a collection gathered by different authors with a shared understanding of second language acquisition. And in this case, Michael Long based his theory on Stephen Krashen's notion of the comprehensible input, where he finds that understanding the language is far more important than learning the structures of a language. And in this case, the negotiation of meaning refers to the exchange of information when interacting with another person. So the lexicosemantic focus means that you care more about the meaning behind the language instead of the grammatical aspect of language when doing this negotiation of meaning. And well, as aforementioned by Kathy, the feedback is an important aspect as well. He makes a clear difference between positive and negative feedback. For him, the positive feedback is an implicit correction to a mistake made by a learner. And the negative feedback is the typical type of feedback that you would see in the classroom, which is the teacher saying the correct sentence or just straight away correcting the learner with the appropriate form or with the answer. And then some limitations and criticism to consider is that in this way, outside of the classroom, there's language acquisition as well. That the process is uh, everywhere. It's not just inside of the classroom, and that's maybe something that Michael Long does not address. As for instance, the feedback process, it's not likely to happen outside of the classroom. That's something that you see just in the classroom environment. And then you have the language learner, the language level in each learner. So the individual differences between the language, between students and their language competence, it's not addressed as well. Because if you have a big difference in the language proficiency, then it's not going to be productive at all. Then you have the teaching strategies using the hypothesis. The input, in this case for the theory, the interaction aspect is really important in order to acquire a second language, but by itself, it's not enough to acquire a second language. Thus, it needs different methods included as well, because by itself it cannot guarantee the acquisition of the target language. And that's it. So now we move on to the connection between the theory and the teaching of English as a foreign language with Sara.
Thank you, Luciano. Now, Melissa and me, we are going to talk about the final topic. And I would like to introduce this topic with the question, what is the connection between interaction hypothesis and the teaching of English as a foreign language? Well, according to Michael Long, conversational interaction facilitates language acquisition because it connects input, remember that is what learners hear and read. It also connects internal learner capacities, particularly selective attention, and output, that is what learners produce. So all those things are connected in productive ways. Therefore, Long sees interaction as a very important facilitating factor in L2 acquisition success. The connection here in this case is the interaction in the classroom between teachers and students, as well as among the students, in which active participation and learning of the students becomes vital. Is very essential since conversations are part of the social cultural activities through which students contract knowledge collaboratively. So the interaction hypothesis can have positive effects on L2 development because through this interaction, students can acquire the language. Another point is the interaction hypothesis states that interaction facilitates SLA because conversational and linguistic modification that occur in discourse provide learners with the necessary comprehensible linguistic input. For example, if teachers try to provide opportunities for oral discussion in their classes, encourage learners to initiate topics and put some responsibility on the part of their learners. And the class will be enjoyable, creative, and initiative. And for those students who are either reserved or reluctant to participate in the classroom, the teacher can directly ask them to speak rather than wait for their responses or answers.
Although there are several studies that link interaction with language acquisition, not all researchers take the idea that interaction is the primary means by which language ability develops. In the survey of the literature on the subject, Larson Freeman says that interaction isn't necessary for language acquisition. She does say, however, that it helps in certain circumstances. Gass and Selinker claim that as well, is as interaction facilitating learning, it may also function as priming device, with setting the stage for learning rather than being the means by which learning takes place. In addition, Alice notes that interaction isn't always positive. Sometimes it can make the input more complicated, or produce amounts of inputs which overwhelm learners. This can happen if interlocutors use extensive paraphrase or give complex definition of a word that wasn't understood. And he comes with the conclusion that the role of interaction in language acquisition is a complex one.
So, thank you for watching and listening. Hope you understand now a little bit about interaction hypothesis by Michael Lang. Bye.
Bye!
Bye.
Bye.